Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Real Euro Football Talk. It is myself, Coach Mele, and Coach Sebastian Fandert. Today we have the pleasure of having Alex Honig.
Hello.
And from most of you know here in Germany, he has had an interesting journey coming up through the ranks. He is now currently planning on going to TCU, and I believe is officially still registered as a Schwäbish Hall Unicorn. And alongside him, we have his father, James Honig.
Hi.
I'll say it right now, former Nuremberg Ram, also a national team player. He currently is a teacher, okay? And so currently right now, what are we talking about, Coach Sebastian? From what is going around saying is we still have a lockdown?
Absolutely, we still locked down, no practices allowed. Of course, the Unicorns find a way to practice there. No, just kidding. The city of Schwäbish Hall make a good example. I think everyone is trying to do the same, getting small groups, practice, but let's see if the bigger cities allow it too. But yeah, maybe football is back in a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always say, people have been asking me about it and what I think. I mean, from what I've been reading, I'm just going to say that at the end of the day, a small step is a big step for everybody, especially going into town this morning and seeing how stores are slowly opening up, at least for here in Ravensburg. So that's big for us. So now getting on to our two special guests, Mr. TCU himself and his dad. So how's everything going with you guys? I believe you guys are located in Roth. It's just south of Nuremberg, right?
Yeah, that's true. South of Nuremberg, and basically around here it's the same as in other parts of Germany. So everything is basically locked down, and they're just starting to open stuff up step by step. And school for me is going to start next week because I'm a senior and I have to prepare for my exams, and I'm going to have them next month. So for me, everything is going to start in a slow pace, but it's something that's going to happen. And yeah, everybody's affected in a way. So we also see how everything is closed at the moment.
No, definitely. I mean, I think that's interesting because also like your dad, James, he's also a teacher. So it's funny having that in the same household because, how is that for you guys, for example? Because I'll ask you real quick, James, but like you're kind of saying right now you have to study for your exams. Do you have like some sort of virtual meetings or calls with your teachers preparing for that, or how has that been kind of set up?
So basically, we have some communication with the teachers, especially if we have some new stuff they have to get to us, because most of the subjects we have the finals about, we haven't finished every topic yet. So they had to send us stuff and we had to teach it ourselves, you could say. And we will meet them, we will see our teachers again next week, but for now we have to stay in contact via email and all that to just, yeah.
Okay. And for you, James, how's everything going for you work-wise? Since you also have to head back soon to work, like, are you basically on the same type of setup where you have to kind of try to teach virtually, or not really?
Well, I try. We did some digital teaching, and it's basically emails,
Okay.
and I keep them busy. But I've got 29 students, so you can imagine that it's not an easy task.
100%. I was about to say you guys could just get on Zoom and just call everybody. At once.
I haven't Zoomed yet, no, but it's basically email, and we started digital learning on the platform,
Okay.
And let's see what it might bring up.
Okay. I mean, of course, we're talking in a very interesting period because for the most part right now, in many people's, let's say, lives, careers, especially not talking in terms of Alex, for example, it's like you're kind of planning to make the jump right now to TCU in the States. For example, even for us sitting here, it's like we're waiting on this GFL season to kind of slowly start rolling. So it's very interesting where everybody's careers are kind of like at a Stilllegung zum Beispiel. Just kind of say we're at a pause right now. We're kind of like the ball's trying to roll, but it's not. So the interesting thing is for you, talking about your journey, essentially right now you're looking at, like we talked about in the pre-talk, is getting into TCU, essentially the winter/spring semester is what you were talking about. I mean, have you been in contact with your coaches there about how that's supposed to look like right now, or what's going on with that?
So I've been in contact with the coaches, but we haven't really talked about me enrolling and when it is going to happen. But we just talked about the season stuff and how they are restricted at the moment. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the NCAA is gonna do with the football season. Because in my opinion, it's tough to have a season without proper preparation. So you have to have a camp and summer camps, and you have to have the kids around for 2 or 3 months before the season starts. Because just injury-wise, you don't want anything to happen just because of the lack of preparation. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do or how they're going to loosen it up and get the players back on campus. But I just hope that the season, or maybe they're going to move the season or the games, I just hope it doesn't affect me getting over there. And I also hope the travel restrictions will get loosened up again, so we are allowed to travel to the US. But we'll see. I mean, everything just happens week by week, so we'll see what happens.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because like, so far looking at it for you, you've had an interesting journey to now be sitting in this situation, because you've come from being, I mean, I'm just gonna say it, like you've had noise around you for the last 3-4 years, I would say, where people started taking notice of you a little bit, kind of seeing you make the jump from one program to the next, and then seeing you going to the States and doing all these camps and so forth. And, you know, so it's very interesting right now where we're trying to talk about, all right, we have the Corona situation, but also talking about your journey, because you started off, from what I know, in the youth program in Nuremberg, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you started off, was it flag football, or how was the setup when you first started, when you first started playing? Because you were pretty young.
When I first started playing, I started playing flag football like every other kid, basically, back then in Germany. And the first time I played tackle football, I was 13 years old, I guess, or 12 or 13 years old, and basically had a flag football season in inside in the winter and then on the field in the summer. And I did that, and I actually didn't play youth football in Nuremberg because my first year, I had 2 U16 years in Schwäbish Hall after that, and then one youth U19 year in Schwäbish Hall. So in Nuremberg, I basically had all my flag football, and we had some tackle football at the end of the year. But basically everything started, how I got all the knowledge about the sport and just get to know the sport, everything happened in Nuremberg. Yeah.
Right. I remember seeing you, I think it was 3-4 years ago, when you weren't allowed to play yet, or at least for the Warriors.
Yeah.
Because your brother Chris, who was actually a really good German receiver, was playing for us. I remember seeing this kid the first time I ever met you, and I'm like, who is this kid and why is he here? Like, just being honest, because I'm like, he's not practicing. I'm like, whose kid is this? I'm not gonna lie, I thought your dad was somebody else on the team, because I'm like, is this his kid? Like, who is this? You know, and you're out there just throwing around the ball, trying to help out as much as you can. So at least when I kind of found out who you were, that was your brother, it was kind of, it was an impression, because you don't really see that. That's like, let's say when we talk about in the States, in college, for example, and somebody, let's say gray shirts or red shirts, it's more like in JUCO, junior college. Normally you won't see those people. Like you'll see them maybe a couple practices, then they realize, okay, per se, they won't have a legitimate spot on the roster, an active roster, and then you don't see them for the rest of the semester, you know? And then you see a handful of guys that, let's say, they'll stick it out and they'll still practice with the team. Like, that's what I did at JUCO. You know, I redshirted my first year, you know, because I was like this, you know, and I had to get bigger, and I was there every single practice. So that kind of like, you know, it was an impression, because I'm like, you got a kid here who's not eligible to play for us, or at least try out per se, but he's here at the week-long camp. For people that don't know, at the Bavarian Warriors, the regional state team out here in Bavaria, for example, there's one big camp, and that is a week deal. So that was big, because, I mean, you could be at home hanging out, you know, in Rotterdam or Nuremberg doing something. So that was an impression. And for me, I kind of wanted to talk about that, because, I mean, first of all, knowing your parents, like your dad is a teacher, he's instilled a lot in you, also your mom. Does that come from the way that your parents have raised you? Because I saw that from an early age that you had that. You know, so you've had that like it factor from the very, like, for a while, from what I've seen.
So the way my parents raised me, basically they never forced me to do anything. They just helped me along the way in every way possible. So not only financially, but also getting me somewhere, driving me somewhere, and getting me to practice. So it was my decision. I was talking to Luca Daumlang, the OC at that time, and he was also coaching me at sometimes in the flag football team. And my brother made the team, made the Bavarian Warriors. So I was trying to help in any way possible, and I just want to be around the guys and be around football, because most of the guys were my teammates, the Nuremberg guys that got to the Warriors. So I knew a lot of guys, and I just want to be around and wanted to get to know the system, because I was thinking about playing there the year ahead. So I wasn't even sure that I'm gonna go to Schwäbish Hall at that moment. So it turned out that I never played for the Warriors, which is a bummer, because I would have loved to play there. But I just had a good time to be around Luca and the coaches and to help out throwing for the receivers. So I just loved being with guys that play football, that love the sport of football, because everybody that went to the week camp loves the sport and just wants to play. So I just had such a great time being around these guys, because it's just a different atmosphere being at a week camp than just practice. So I had a really good time, yeah.
No, definitely. And for you, James, I mean, how has it kind of been for you? Let's say we don't have to get really in depth yet, but kind of you seeing how your son started off, you know, from those early ages. Because what was it at that time? How old are you, Alex? 14?
I was
15?
14 or 15.
Right?
Yeah.
Like for
14,
James, how was that for you? I mean, because I could imagine for you being a father. I mean, you've been along the of course you support him and everything, but you've been side by side basically with him, you and your wife, the whole way. And what's it like for you kind of being right next to him and kind of seeing that journey that he's taking right now from the beginnings when he was playing flag football in Nuremberg?
Well, we missed something. He started soccer actually here in Road, like all the kids did when he was in elementary school. And sorry. And then we made the step to try to play football because he wanted, not Christian. It was him first. And Susanne supported it right away, because for her the whole soccer thing was too small. It was not the thing she wanted. Soccer here in Germany is nice, everybody does it, but you don't have a real perspective or prospects. So football is a big world. You go to other states, hear different dialects, and that was what we needed to bring up the kids, because they should see more. That was our strategy. Okay. And Susanne supported it. She was an athlete in the German Democratic Republic over there in the East. She was a sprinter. So that's why my genes and her, well, they just work perfectly. And so I had some.
Germany too. I'm from Dresden, so.
Ah, nice. My grandma's from Dresden. Okay, and so I had support from her, and she did a lot of driving. And the good thing is that we have 2 boys. If I had, you know, 2 girls, forget it. If we had, you know, 1 girl with a pony and Alexander throwing the ball, different thing, because then you have to split up who takes care of the girl, who takes care of the boy. But this became a family thing. And when Christian knew that he could be a hero, a real good baller in football, and when he jumped on the boat, then we had 2 boys playing football for the Rams, and they really wrote some kind of history over there. And then things were even easier, having 2 boys playing the same sport. And I never forced them, because in the 80s, I remember days when we played really hard football here in Germany. You know, we were screaming during warm-ups. It was like getting prepared for a battle, for a scrimmage, like a warrior. It was not about being an athlete. No. It was about hit hard. And in those days, I've seen things when we played Ansbach and Hanau, I did not want to experience again. And I did not want my kids to experience this kind of football. And then I figured out that football has changed. And football is now on a pretty high level. It was pretty high when the NFL Europe was here in the 90s. Yeah. But now it's even better. The coaches got better. Of course, with the help of internet, everything is on a higher level. And there are no drugs involved. I couldn't find them when I played in 2008. They didn't even talk about it. And that was different in the 90s. So it became a clean sport with gentlemen. And I liked it, and I fell in love with it. At the age of 41, I played again, and my kids adopted this and actually played as well. And since then, we are quite happy.
Perfect. And how was for you, Alex, then getting all the support? Was this also so? What was the reason to say I go already in the junior age to Schwäbish Hall? I mean, this is also the right Schwäbish Hall from your home. What was your mindset of doing this? You already know I'm good, or you just want to learn getting a higher level, or how that comes?
So actually, I was doing a lot of camps besides practice just to get better and to be around better players, and to have the competition as well. And I was at a camp at a high school in Ansbach, and I met the guy Max Zaha. He's from Bonn. He was coaching there at the time, and I talked to him about getting better and how I may have a shot. I wanted to play high school football back then. I wanted to play for a high school team just to be around the Friday nights atmosphere and everything. And I talked to him, and he actually got me in touch with Brandon. And he also told me if I want to go to the States, I also have to step up my competition here in Germany. And I was actually thinking about the same thing at the same time. And then I was just trying to figure out where the best team is here in the South. And there was Firsty. They were playing GFLJ. Nuremberg also played, but they were always the team that I would say, yeah, the sixth team in the group that never really had a shot of making the playoffs. But I just felt like Schwäbish Hall or Firsty was the way to go. And when I got to my parents with that idea, they immediately actually supported me. Well, it was
something different.
Well, they said they didn't want to do it, but when I got my brother as well to come with me, they said if both of us are going, they will drive us all the way. So they didn't want to have one guy going to Nuremberg and one guy going to Schwäbish Hall. They wanted both of us in Schwäbish Hall or both of us in Nuremberg. So we made the agreement that we both would go to Schwäbish Hall, and I think it was the best decision I made. Not leaving Nuremberg, but because I had a great time there, great teammates, but just the way of practice, the way of competition over there in Schwäbish Hall, it's just different. And you can really compare it to a high school level. I mean, we only have practice 2 times a week, but we get so much stuff done in these 2.5 hours we have. When I went there, I actually didn't even think about going to a high school anymore. I wanted to play youth football there, and also got in touch with Brandon to get to a US college. So that was my plan, to stay in Schwäbish Hall, play in Schwäbish Hall, and then go after my junior season.
So Dad had a remark right there. So
yeah, well, Max Zaha approached us in Kaderbach at the high school. It was the second time we went there to show him actually more, like people talking English and stuff. We needed this in those days to support their scholastic career. And so he turned away and took his cell phone, and then he came up with this screenshot telling us, oh, it's only 120 Ks.
That's a lot.
So he was pretty eager in convincing us. And we were hesitating, because does it make sense to drive that far? Now I say yes. So we hesitated, but we never were actually against it. But they are doing a really good job in Schwäbish Hall, really, as they do. And he needed it. He liked it there. And now after 3 years, I guess, 3 years, yeah, we don't regret anything.
How was that whole deal? Because I remember, because I coached there, and I remember every time the U19 and the juniors, they practiced before us on Wednesdays and Fridays. And I remember it was either you were there, or for the most part, Mom was there. And I'd always see you guys sitting there waiting for your kids to finish practice. I could imagine it's a lot, because you have to balance your own jobs, you and your wife, and then also, okay, who's taking the kid on this day and when there's games and so forth. Because when you say 120 kilometers, that's a lot.
One way.
Yeah, that's what, 2 hours maybe?
90 minutes or an hour 20?
An hour 10, hour 15, one way.
Because I remember when you were telling me, you're like, if you guys were to have to take the train, it would be a lot longer, because you have to go back into Nuremberg and then back out. So it's like, it's still a trek. It's still basically a journey you're taking every practice to get there and get back.
Yeah. So the first 2 years, Mom and Dad were driving, but then Christian got his driver's license when he was 18. So that kind of helped. But at the beginning, my parents just tried to get stuff done when they were waiting for us to finish practice. And both of my parents, they also loved the sport of football and loved watching it. So they had a great time watching us perform in practice and scrimmage. So it wasn't like they didn't have a good time doing it, but they just had to manage and find a way to get stuff done, get school stuff done, get exams looked at and stuff like that. So because both of my parents are teachers, so they have the afternoon to get work done, but they can coordinate it on their own. So they don't have to stay at their job, so they can do stuff in the car or waiting for us. So yeah.
But it was a family affair. So Sunday did the driving for 3 years. It wasn't 2 years. It was almost 3 years. And but she did a lot of work there, like correcting. So did I when I was driving once in a while. But I do the cooking. So whenever, say, we're on the trip back home, there was this call from Ansbach. We are at Ansbach. For me, that was 22 minutes. 22 minutes to get everything done.
Yeah.
The son is very disciplined, so the time they come in here into the kitchen, everything has to be done because they have to be in bed early. Every minute counts. So, I got better and better by the week.
Absolutely. So, but just to say that it's like close to 500 kilometers a week. A week. That is like close to 2,000 kilometers a month. You're driving just for practice. That is.
But I mean, when you think about the sport of football, it's always that there aren't as many teams. So we also had to drive to Nuremberg the years before. So it was also a 30-minute drive, and it was a different kind of drive because going to Nuremberg, we had to go in the inner city, and we were stopping at basically every stop sign there was and stop light there was. So driving to Schwäbish Hall is like going from a village to a village. It's just, we counted, it's just 3 stoplights, and it's just going on the highway, staying on the highway, getting off the highway, and we're at the practice field. So it's a relaxing drive, you could say. It's not.
But what I like also, sometimes to put some numbers out, because now it's, with Brandon bring out 61 scholarships. What the kids and the parents do to getting to this point, as TCU says, there's a scholarship. It's not from sitting at home and be the hero at your local team. Sometimes you have to reach your area. Sometimes you have to put something else on the table before, because I can imagine, otherwise, we coaching here also the juniors, how many kids calling every day, I can't come to practice. I say, why? Oh, I have this and this and this. I say, you're living 5 meters away from the practice field. Are you kidding me? I mean, what is so important the next 2 hours is you not can make it right now. So, and on the other side, they're like, oh yeah, what I need to do to go to college. They come to practice first. That can help you a lot. So that's a great little wrinkle on it. Yeah.
No, but definitely, because then I look at it too from what you're talking about. You're basically getting exposed to what it's going to be in the States or what it is in the States. Because at the end of the day, it's time management. Can you manage your time? Like what Coach was just talking about, we have that all the time. It's not only with the kids, it's even with the seniors. Like I've heard every excuse in the book, even from guys that are in college. And when they say, hey, Coach, I can't come, and even for little things, and I'm always understanding, like, I get if you have an exam and so forth, but technically if you have an exam tomorrow, I would assume that you've been studying for this exam and you're kind of prepared, because, I know your dad, James, knows this too. It's like 100% they are not sitting there studying 12 hours straight. Nobody's doing that. And I can say, to be honest too, I've never done that either. And also to get that break, even if you show up only for if you show up for individuals, you do some skelly, do some team, that's maybe an hour, and then you can leave. So you can still come in some sort of fashion, but you guys have had the true commitment of saying, no, we're here all the time for the most part. And did you miss any practices ever?
I think I probably missed some, but it wasn't that I didn't manage the time, because oftentimes I even talked to my mom when she said you have to get stuff done. I was like, I got basically close to 3 hours of a car drive. I can get stuff done while being in the car. So it was how you also talked about investing time, and that's all it is. I mean, if you want to get better, you just have to go to the best competition. And in Germany, it's tough to find competition. Sometimes you have to go all the way to NRW to a camp to work with the best coaches and play against the best players. So I just try to manage everything so I had as much time as possible for football. So yeah.
Right. Have your school grades taken a hit from it at all, or you've kind of stayed on top of that?
They haven't. They haven't.
Nothing?
So basically, I'm always above average in my class and always doing good. So I'm lucky that I never had to worry about maybe dropping or anything like that. So I was always solid going through it, and sometimes I was pretty good, and sometimes I was just average. So it worked out in the end. So I had never had a problem with school, so that's good for me as well. Because I know other kids that try to put everything into football, and they think football is everything, but you want to go to a university and play there, so you also have to do the student part. So you have to get that right.
Because if even Dimi was saying that the other day, he was saying because he was talking about his grades took a small drop once he got to Rhode Island, because you got to get accustomed to class schedule, especially there, I guess, because they practice in the mornings, and for him that's completely different than where he came at from the high school he was at in Florida. But it's all part of the process, like if you want to play in the States, you got to have grades,
Yeah.
And also tying in now the thing you're talking about, where it's like, okay, you want to play at a higher level, you want to get good coaching, like you were saying, because from what I know, you were going around also on weekends, and sometimes if you had like a holiday week, you'd go train with somebody, train with coaches. You also now starting to get into camps and clinics in the States, or there was invites, and you were doing that also in the meantime. So you're putting also full effort, not only in the school, but also the football to better all areas, right?
Yeah. So basically, when you want to go to college directly from Germany, it's even harder for the kids, because when you don't have good grades and you're in the States, you'll get help at your high school, and you have football and the school combined in one. But in Germany, you have to do it professionally. You have to cut other things. You can't go out partying on the weekend every time. So you just have to manage your time, and it takes way more time in Germany to get school and sport done, because in the States, you get school done in the morning, and in the afternoon you get on the field and practice. But in Germany, you might have to get the SAT. You have to study for that, because it's required for going to college, and you have to do that next to school. So you do the German school part, and then you have to do the part for the NCAA eligibility. So it's even more for German students, and that's why some kids over here in Germany, they underestimate the student part of it. They just want to be a great athlete, but in the end, you're a student athlete. And that's what they preach over there in the States. At every camp, they say you're a student first, athlete second. And as a kid here in Germany, you have to know that, and you have to get eligible first before showing the coaches what it's all about.
Yeah. Before we hitting the next thing, then with how everything works out, also with Brandon and all that stuff. Now you imagine this already, and there's a bigger question for you both. Where's the sometimes is this the right thing I do? You say no parties on the weekend, all the time in the car. You sometimes sitting down at home like, what if I don't make it? Is there sometimes you say, damn, is it what we do right, what we do wrong? I give up so many things in your youth time. Or you just had this confidence, I will make it. Also, you as a parent, you probably say, well, is it too much, too less, whatever?
So on my part, as a player, I don't think there was any doubt. Because for me, it was always my goal to be the best player I can, the best football player I can, and the best person on the field. And so it wasn't all about college. It was, of course, it was my main goal. But I knew if I worked for it as hard as I could, I would end up in a place where I would feel comfortable at, because I didn't want to be at home and thinking about what I could have done. I just wanted to know that everything I did was the maximum I could have done. So at the end, I will be where I belong. I will be where I'm supposed to get with all that I can do. So for me, there wasn't any doubt. For me, it was the right thing. also the process was what I liked about it. It wasn't, of course, it was tough at times when you didn't get an offer and other kids did. And I mean, I felt great for them, but I was like, what do I have to work on? And you saw the stuff where you may be slower in the 40, you may not broad jump that much, you may be inaccurate in one-on-ones at the camp. So there was always stuff I had to work on. And I just loved also seeing me getting better. And it was all around football. And in the end, it would have hurt even more if I would regret not doing anything than doing it all and not making it. So for me, it just was the process I was committed to, just to give everything I had to the sport.
Yeah, we never had any second thoughts. But one thing about Schwäbish Hall, we went there because in Bavaria they didn't have a league for him, and in Baden-Württemberg they had the under 16 league. So this was our main idea, to say we do the trip because of him. He needs a league. And the other thing is, once he started to work together with Brandon, we only had positive input. You know, people approached us. Brandon was one of the first who said he's got the stuff that it takes. Do it. And then we had the trips. The first college trip that we did with Brandon with PPI, that was in 2017. And I was a bus driver. So all of a sudden I was driving a 15-seater. So I was in the middle of it. So I never got bored. And actually, last year in 2019, my wife and me did another trip. So we were both bus drivers. So we had it again and again and again. And where we went to, doors opened. You know, people were fond of him. And even though his position, a quarterback, is quite exotic, you know, to bring in a European quarterback, but he proved to be the right one. And so we just never had any hesitation or any second thoughts. We just knew that it's something that we have to support. And so we did.
Perfect. Was there a particular moment you recognize I have a chance? Was there a moment you see maybe your first visit at a Division I college, this coming from a dream to be a Division I quarterback to there's a real chance I'm good enough to make it? Was there a point you're like, hey, they're not bigger, they're not faster, I'm on the edge with them?
So obviously, physical-wise and athletic-wise, I was always like better than most of the German kids and also the high school kids here in Europe. So these were the first guys I was competing against. For example, Xavier Scott, the receiver from he was in a high school in Vilseck here in Germany. He was at UConn now. And he was one of the first highly recruited guys I met, and he's a great athlete. So I was looking at him like, I need to get like him to get to the States. But then when I first came over to the States and I was competing against guys my age, I just felt like I can compete with them and I can stick out, because doing the athletic part of it at the combine camps, I was always in the top of my group, in my age group. So for me, it was normal to just be around great guys, and I was getting used to it. And I felt more and more comfortable in this position, playing against or competing with these great athletes. And I would say at the end of the first tour, I felt really comfortable when I was in Michigan. And even Jim Harbour approached me and he talked to me. And that's, I would say, when I thought, wow, this is actually possible, because this guy, Jim Harbour, the coach from Michigan, one of the winning, I guess the winningest college football program there is at the moment. It was incredible to get the recognition over there in the States, because I only had the recognition in Germany. Only had people in Germany talking to me and saying, hey, you're so good. And I was like, I know I'm good in Germany, but I want to match up with the guys over there in the States. So when Jim Harbour talked to me, this was probably the day that I said, okay, it's possible for me, and now I'm just gonna work as hard as I can to get to a program where I feel comfortable. And yeah.
But at the same time, and I know this because I remember, I was at Hall at that time when all this was kind of happening, and I would have interesting conversations with Coach Newman there, where, because like, for example, like this was also the thing, like if you're missing, and you kind of know this, the way that Hall is ran, if you're missing, you can't start, right? So, and I know they had another quarterback there, was basically you two battling for the position. And I think a lot of times, like, based on, like, because you couldn't come and so forth, because you had to make these trips to the States with the camps and stuff, like, was there a conflict now there where, like, but now let's say your German football career in Schwäbish Hall was also having an effect, right?
Yeah, so the year I was I would say rookie in the U19, so freshman, you could say. The other guy was a senior, and it was last year, and I didn't get the starting job in the end because just I don't know, there was a coaching decision. I didn't agree with it, but that's what I ran with it, and I tried never to be disrespectful or anything. I just had a part as the second QB, so it gave me a little bit more freedom to go to States and not to be worried about having my home team left alone. So that in the end, it even gave me the chance to do the Texas tour in July when I missed the quarterfinals. So in the end, it worked out the right way. And I mean, I never regret any decision I've made, and I'm never worried about any decision, because in the end it will open other doors. And looking back at it, it all makes sense now, and it all worked out perfectly. So I was, of course, pissed off at the moment, but I mean, the other guy was around 24/7, and I missed a few practices being all over the place. So yeah.
Because I mean, that's the tough part. I mean, you both of you guys knowing how the Schwäbish Hall setup is, it's like they're not going to hand stuff out just because you're the better player. I mean, this is the thing, right? And it's kind of tough sometimes to look at as a coach. You have a guy who basically is a D1 quarterback recruit in the States, you know, and nothing against the other kid, but there's a big discrepancy when we're looking at, okay, I got these two guys in the position, who should I go with? You know, and I can imagine even like kind of now you were talking about it, saying you look back at it now and you say, you know what, there's a reason why it ended up this way. It gave me the liberty to be able to kind of now progress to this situation. Because that's the thing, like you say, what if it be a situation where you kind of feel bad and it's kind of holding you back from, let's say, getting to those camps, getting to that July visit that from Brandon talked to us about, actually was, and we'll talk about it, it was originally planned Taylor and so forth. So that has a big effect, you know, especially for your development as a player. And then also, like you said, you don't want to hurt your teammates. So that's huge, because a lot of guys your age and even older guys, they wouldn't think that way, you know. So that's one of those toughies right there.
Yeah, there was an interesting story. It was on 24th of April, about 12 months from now, that he was in Wiesbaden, and James Franklin, head coach of Penn State, approached him and said, yeah, you're going to be a Division I quarterback. So my wife took him and drove all the way to Schwäbish Hall, and I drove to Thuringia, where I have a hut in the woods. And she called me and said, can you imagine? They're going to let the other guy start. And so I had to calm down my wife, you know. And Alexander was sad, but he took it like a pro. He was a real pro. He's a team player. And as I told you before, whenever a door closes, another one will open for us. Mm-hmm. And so we made those trips to the States, especially the one to Texas. He wouldn't have done it as a starting quarterback. So Texas, the Baylor offer and the TCU offer came in because of that. So now we are the big grinners and the winners. And well, that's it. Smiling honeys.
And the big thing for me is also talking about, it's like we've been talking about already, essentially, with everything. It's like you guys have been trusting the process, and you've been trusting Brandon through this whole time, and the people that kind of already know what we talked about before. It's like he's the CEO and founder of PPI Recruits. So like alongside this whole thing, you got Brandon that's helping you out. So like this is all tying into where it's like you guys know, okay, this is what it's going to take, and he's also in your ear telling you, hey, like these are the steps we're taking to get you where you want to go. Because, and I know, like I talked to Brandon about it too. I remember the one time when I stayed at your guys' house, it was for a PPI event, and you know your dad James asked me point blank, like, are we doing the right thing going with Brandon? Because we don't have to talk about it, but it also brings in the whole recruiting aspect, where a lot of people think recruiters are only out here looking for money. And you got a guy that's doing it because he's been through the process himself. And if people don't know the story, it's a very interesting story what he went through. Basically, he sold himself to get himself a scholarship. And that's what he's using his experiences and connections to help other kids who don't necessarily have those opportunities like he didn't coming out of high school, to help guys out like you. And that's very interesting because, you know, along the way, you are going to have these thoughts and saying, you know what, like, because that's life. We're human. We're always going to be thinking in the back of our minds, are we doing the right thing? But you've had a guy with Brandon PPI who's been like, you know what, as long as we stay the course, it's going to pay off. And when you see now from where it started, and, and there's been always people out there, naysayers, saying, you know what, like, it's not going to work and blah, blah, blah. But like Coach already mentioned, 61 scholarships later, you're one of those, and it's a big one because it is a top school in the States that now you're essentially looking at getting to, So my biggest thing is talking to you guys is how much of an influence you would say, and how much does Brandon mean to you guys along this whole journey, because he has had a big impact on it.
Yeah, so Brandon basically played the biggest part in my recruitment, because he was the only guy, I would say, in Germany that could tell me that I had what it take, and I would believe him and not just be like, okay, he's another guy who just saw me play my hometown team. So he was the guy that brought me over there the first time for these college camps, and he got me on this surface of college football, and he showed me around, and he got me in front of all these great coaches, and he always told me to trust the process, and in the end it will always work out. And I was just glad that I had him through this whole process, to have him around and just have him support me in my recruitment, because recruiting is hard, not only for the US kids, but especially for the European kids. It's way tougher because you're not in front of these coaches 24/7. You just have to get there, and when you get the chance, the coach looks at you, you have to perform, and when the coach is looking at you, you have to be the best player you can be. So Brandon gave me the chance to do that a lot of times, to get in front of coaches, and in the end it all worked out. I mean, he was fighting for me to get there, and fighting for me to get the chance. And of course I was always trying to follow his path, I would say. And I think all these 61 other kids, or 60 other kids that did that, they don't regret it, because he talked about it being possible, and you wouldn't believe it right away. But looking back at it now, it was just a crazy trip with PPI. It just it was basically all of my recruiting was helped by him just being next to me and comforting me. And because as a European, you don't know anything about recruiting. You don't have friends that went through the whole process, so it's a first-hand experience. And he helped me just to not be afraid of all the process and stuff.
Yeah, Brandon is brilliant. He really is a nice guy and helped us a lot, and always supported us. In the beginning, he was a little bit shy about him, because he's a skilled player and a quarterback. How can you bring a quarterback over there? They are looking for offensive linemen first. That's it. You say need linemen, then maybe D linemen, and maybe a linebacker or defensive end or something like tight end. Yes, maybe a tight end, and of course a punter or a kicker. But a quarterback, nah. So he proved. The problem was to find a coach here in Germany. And you don't find any coaches here, or hardly can find any. And we were advised to join with Peter Laletsky, who worked in those days with Brandon. And Peter was a real help for us, enormous help. So we tried to bring Alexander up to Paderborn as often as we could. It didn't happen too often, but he stayed there at his place, and that was fine. Good workout, and he progressed every time. And also, Peter, when it comes to the position of quarterback, he knows what he's talking about. Right. And Brandon, he's got the experience. He's not a guy who just sneaked in. He's coming out of there. He's coming from the States. He did it. He played on the highest level. And, he's the #1 guy to go to.
No, it's what both of you guys were just talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, it's good to have people around you to help guide you in those instances, like right now with the recruiting process. You're saying, like, 100%, like, and I see this all the time, and you can see it on clips when Brandon posts like the videos where you see some of these kids that show up to those showcases, and you can tell they're not used to the pace and what is expected. Like, for example, offensive line, when they go O-line, D-line, it's rapid fire. You got to run back up to the line and so forth. And it's funny, you look at those little things, because this is the thing, right? And of course, a lot of those are invitationals, but for the most part, the kids that are there, they're good enough, right? There's a reason why they're there. And I mean, Alex knows this too. It's like, they're looking for that it factor, right? Do you have that motor? Are you busting your butt? Are you getting up? If, let's say you get beat, because it happens all the time, right? Are you getting up and running back to the line? Let's go the next rep. Those are the things where for a lot of kids, they're not used to that fast pace, because, and sad to say it, but a lot of programs and coaches don't push that, don't make it an emphasis out here in Europe. It's one of those things where it's like, you got to know it's like this. So 100%, at least being in that Schwäbish Hall system, that helps you out also as well. Because for the most part, for what I know, everything is rapid fire. But at the same time, it's like you just said, at the end of the day, and I even talked to Brandon about it, for me, in my opinion, what Brandon does and sends those invites out for the tours and stuff, that is your invite to the job interview. You know, now you get the job is when you're there. Brandon's like, all right, you got to put it in now, because basically all the work's been done for you now. Now it's up to you to show up at that day, you know, and perform in front of scouts. And that's the biggest thing where a lot of Europeans, like you said, they're not used to it. They haven't been exposed to it. So it's good that you have guys like Brandon. You have guys like Peter, for example, where you do have a really good coach, especially, I don't know how many hours away that was for you. How many hours was the drive to get to him, Peter?
4 hours.
4 hours?
I was going by train a lot of times, so it was, yeah.
So we picked him up and brought him back home.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, you do what you got to do, right, to get you there, because essentially you got someone over here who's putting all the work to get you, say, hey, you know what, we got whatever camp in 5-8 months, and you got to be ready to go. And you're looking at it, you're like, I'm not letting this chance slip by. Because for a lot of Europeans, they don't know this, like, those chances never come around a second time, ever, you know? That's big.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about TCU. How was the workout? How was this workout at TCU? And how was this incredible feeling getting the call? Or how was it? The call, the letter, how the guys saying.
And your mom was excited too. I saw that.
You're getting this. Because for me, I have no idea why your story, maybe I hope it will come, your story on Pro7 or Sat.1 or wherever is the first European quarterback, and when you put out a starting job, I hope so. That will be, nobody did it done before. You know, this is what is it's in the sports world. Nobody did it done before. How was it? How was it over there?
So I actually went to Baylor the end of July. So my plan was to get to the Baylor camp and perform and get the Baylor offer. And because Brandon was talking to a recruit and I was talking to a recruit, and it almost seemed like I would get the Baylor offer if I just show up and show everything I did on tape. So I went to Texas with my mom, and we were staying there, and Brandon had a group of guys with him, and they went to Houston. And I didn't go there. I went to Texas A&M, but we didn't camp there. We just visited. And then 2 days before the Baylor camp, there was a TCU camp. And basically, I actually thought I wouldn't do the camp. I just would watch the other guys do the camp and just look around at TCU and have a good time that day, and just trying to get my body right for the camp at Baylor. And then when I was at TCU, the QB coach approached me, and he wanted me to do the camp because he saw my tape from the West Virginia camp in June, which I did on the main tour. And he saw that tape and followed me on Twitter, and wanted to meet me in person. So I talked to him, and he wanted me to do the camp. And then I did the camp with the other guys from Brandon's group, and of course the American kids. But I didn't want to do the athletic part, the combine part of it, because for me there was no. I mean, I didn't see I didn't see why I should do the 40-yard dash and all the broad jump and everything, because I would do it again like 30 hours later at Baylor. So I didn't do that. I just did the QB individual drills and the one-on-ones. And after that, I also talked to the QB GA at the time, Kenny Hill, a former QB from TCU. I talked to him, and he took me to get some pictures done in TCU gear, and actually didn't get an offer that evening. And we went home again. And the night before the Baylor camp, it was at 10 p.m. I guess. The coach texted me and said, "Hey Alex, I need you to call me." With the number, and we were actually on the way home from the Baylor visits, because we visited Baylor that evening. And then I called him, and he told me that I would have an offer to TCU, and it was incredible. I mean, for me, in my head, I was preparing for the Baylor camp the day ahead, but it was just incredible feeling, because it's just being at these campuses and being at these facilities. it's just a whole different level than anything you have experienced in Germany. It's just, football is so big over there, especially in Texas. It's just, it's football heaven over there. So it was a crazy feeling. I couldn't sleep that night. I went to the Baylor camp with like 5 hours of sleep or something. So it was great, and had my mom with me, and also got the Baylor offer the next day. So I had these 2 offers in 2 days, which was incredible. Never even imagined getting those offers, these big time schools, Big 12 schools. And then on the way back to the airport, the day before flying back home, we visited TCU just to see the campus and look at everything. And me and my mom, we just loved everything about TCU. And for me, there wasn't any other school I would really want to offer from. So it was just, everything was so perfect at TCU that I didn't want to wait any longer, and I committed right away on the day before I flew back home. So I just wanted to get it done before heading back to Germany. And in the end, I mean, it turned out to be perfect, because now I'm not allowed to go to States again.
Yes.
So
yeah.
it was just great to get it done. And because it's tough for Europeans, when the coaches don't see you play, they will lose you, and it's like out of sight, out of mind. So it felt perfectly, and I just wanted to commit. And I'm just so happy it turned out that way, and that I can have that great coaching staff and the great facilities over there. Just to, I mean, it felt right. And my mom said it as well. And if mom approves, I mean, there's no other decision to make.
Yeah. And for your parents, how you feel after that long journey? Starts with the conversation, the practice in Schwäbish Hall, your brother, and then years later you're getting this TCU offer, finally.
That was great, but I had to go to school, so I was working. So that was the reason why I wasn't on the trip. But as I told you, so Sunday was very sad in April when this didn't work out with a starting job. And then 3 months later, she was on the trip because he was not the starter. This allowed him and my wife to go there, though she made a trip with my son to Texas, leaving me alone. So that was a blast. She loves TCU, the color. She is not very fond of this animal. So this is a little bit spooky, but I remember the first offer he got was the one from UMass, and this was here in Germany, in Munich, and we all hugged each other. So that was for us 3, and for the other son we do have, Christian, great athlete. So we were smiling all day long. But then they popped up like Baylor and TCU, and we had so many talks from other schools which said, your time will come. So they expected him to show up in 2020 for another trip, which he, didn't do, couldn't do, and won't do. And so we were really happy. So it was very positive for the family. But this is not the end. Now it really starts.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 50, you can imagine to play in front of 50,000 people. This is the stadium of TCU, 50,000 people.
I think they even upgraded it and put some.
Okay.
So, they put like big suites on it and at the top, and they have a new scoreboard and everything. So it's getting even bigger over there, and it's just, I can't really imagine playing in front of all of these guys. I mean, I would say the biggest crowd I ever played in front of was a few hundred people, like 200 people. So it will be mind-blowing for me. But I mean, that's what I work for, and just thinking about being there it's incredible for me, and I just can't wait to get there. And it's a crazy feeling, but now, I mean, all eyes on me, and I just have to work even harder and get on a whole nother level just to show up there and compete with these guys. So it's just getting started right now.
And 100% what you're saying, where it's just getting started, and I hope you realize that, because a lot of guys don't. When you get now, especially like everybody talks about that transition now, let's say from high school, because this is high school for you, from high school ball to college is a completely different animal, like there, like, and a lot of guys said it, and even Demi, also, him as well. He said every day is a game day.
Yeah.
Every day is a game day. You got to show up, because if you don't show up, just like you said, just the way they lose you in recruiting, coaches will essentially forget about you, even though you're on that roster, right? They'll forget about you if you're not putting in that effort, you know, because this is the worst thing to do. And it says, and we always try to tell our players too, is like, don't be one of those guys who thinks, okay, I've made it, because the work's just getting started, especially now when you got to buy into their system, to their vision as coaches. What is their goal for that coming year? You got to be one of the guys that wants to be a part of that ride, you know, and especially now, you know, if you want to take that next journey and say, what can we do with this college career? Because this is a thing. And this is my honest question to you. Do you feel like there's more pressure now? Because this is the thing, right? It got blown up in the media, right? Everybody and anybody's talking about it, you know, because the second they came out, everybody was talking about it. Was it Ransport was talking about it? Rivals was talking about it in the States. I mean, there was a ton of other sports news channels, and there was posts being made everywhere and articles. But it's like, do you feel pressure now? Because, and I even said it sometimes, I say it to Brandon, I'm like, if he makes it to the NFL, this is big. And it's funny because people are talking about this already, and you haven't even stepped on the campus yet, like officially registered. Is there any pressure when you start hearing about that? Or do you say, you know what, I'm not listening to that noise yet?
I mean, for me, the pressure isn't coming from the outside. It's just me pressuring myself, and it's just me setting my own goals. I don't really care about all the media stuff. For me, it's just, I don't want to disappoint myself rather than disappointing other people that think I will be the next Tom Brady. Because these guys, these are the guys that didn't know me before I got the offer. And these are the guys that won't know me if I won't play in the NFL playoffs in a few years. So there are a lot of guys that think that you could think that they would pressure me, or that their expectations would pressure me, but it isn't like that. It's just basically it is myself putting pressure on me to perform and to get on another level and to show up at TCU. So it's basically me setting my goals, and these goals are way bigger than any other kid or any other guy could tell me what I should do. So it's just making my own goals is my biggest goal for me. So the biggest achievement for me is reaching my own goals, and I don't care what other people say. And I mean, on the football field, there's no hype or anything. It's just either you perform or you don't. So it doesn't matter how many articles or how many people talked about you. It doesn't matter. It's just either you perform or you don't. So it's just between me and not between me and all these other media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you want to study?
I'm not 100% sure yet, but I want to go maybe health or physical education that way.
Okay.
Because I have physical education as a finals, as a Abitur subject, and it's a lot about the body and injuries and rehab and all that. That's really interesting for me, and just I would think about doing the health degree, and maybe combine it with physical education, because that's just what I love doing, and that's the only subject I loved learning. I had a great time and I wanted to study. So I feel like that would be really interesting for me, but I'm not 100% sure yet.
Right.
You know already how you will live there, or is this up in the future a point you have to talk with university? You're living in a complex. I mean, I was at Ole Miss, so some guys living in a huge complex, some guys, the star players, they're living in the private houses. I don't know how it is to set up at TCU in Texas. You know there's something already?
So what the coach told me at TCU, you have to stay on campus in the dorms for your freshman and sophomore year. But I would have visited TCU in April. So a few weeks ago, I would have went there with my dad and did the Elite 11 camp. So I would have known more by then, but of course, we didn't get to travel there because of the travel restrictions. So I haven't really talked about that with the coaches, or with the university. So for me, I've seen the campus and I've seen everything about it, but I'm not 100% sure yet where I'm gonna live or what I'm gonna study or what I'm exactly. My date isn't planned yet.
Okay.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I mean, and for Dad, I mean, kind of looking at all this, especially since, you know, you're a teacher yourself, do you have any advice for him where you're saying, you know what, now that you go to college, because this is the next journey, you guys aren't going to be there physically now for those, you know, those 1.5 hour drives anymore, you know, and back, and then having those meals prepared for him. He's going to have to do this on his own now. Is there anything you've already been talking to him about once you slowly get to that point about, I mean, because it's a thing you've already been talking about. You're a man that talks about there's things that happen in life for a reason, to trust the process. It looks like you're somebody that talks about life lessons to your kids because you've been through a lot and you've also played football like you talked about. You've gone through some things in life. Is there some stuff that you tell them, like, once you get there, like, watch out for these things or do things a certain way? Because, I mean, I always look at it too. I always think, just like my mom did with me, if I'm ever going to have kids, I won't tell them what to do, but I'll tell them some things just like, please do this maybe another way because I tried it this way and it didn't work out.
Well, basically, I'm about to step back a little bit because he just turned 18 and his progress in terms of athleticism and English or whatever is way beyond mine. Mm-hmm. So what kind of advice can he expect from me? I've never been to Texas. I wanted to go there this April and this was skipped. I don't know. He has to do his own march, his own progress, and find out what's right and wrong. In the United States, there are some things you better don't do. So the do's and don'ts, especially in Texas, I can't teach him. So he has to be clever enough to learn it by himself and watch the rules, go by the rules. And when it comes to his college career, academic-wise, I'm a teacher, yes. Susanne is actually a doctor of medicine, so maybe the input in terms of health comes from her side. And I appreciate this because she can put a lot into him as well. But he will do it. We thought about business, but then the kid could be gone forever because business only is good for the United States, also for Germany. But maybe we should give him a chance to come back to Germany. And well, we also said that if this doesn't work out with America, that if he comes back after, let's say, 4 years and he needs extra support here, like to do another college here, then, well, we're going to finance it. It's not that dramatic here, but we're going to do it, and we won't blame him for what he didn't do over there. So he will have the full support until he will have finished college either over there or over here.
And at the end of the day, I mean, we all know, especially you know, as a teacher, it's like, in this day and age, you need to have an education.
Of course.
So that's what everybody always preaches, and even our coaches, and Mom always said it to me. He's like, just get that paper. You know, you get the paper, that's what you're getting out of it at the end of the day. You know, it's that free education. How was Mom? Has she already been kind of like, I mean, it's of course it's far away from that point, but I could imagine, you know, it's her youngest son, you know, and then he's going to be gone.
Well, you want to speak for Mom or me?
So, of course, she, along all the whole process always was tough for her because, I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't want me to go to the States, but she always says, if I'm happy, then she's happy. So if she saw me at TCU and she just saw how happy I was, and she's also excited about me watching me play there. Right. So at the end of the day, she's just happy about everything I do, and if I'm happy, I mean, she's okay with it.
No, definitely. Well, we appreciate having you guys on the show. All right.
Thank you for the invitation.
Nothing but the best, especially in this situation where hopefully everything kind of gets handled slowly but surely, especially for you, because that's a very big step now, going from over here to the States with this whole quarantine situation and travel ban, but hopefully everything works out. And then it's closer to that day where you get to move, and ultimately, you know, hopefully the family goes to watch you live, you know, on a game day. That'd be big, you know, but wish you all nothing but the best. Okay. And then stay safe, and then we'll talk. Okay.